Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, MBs, and welcome to Warui Deshou's second stream. We're going to be covering the finale, or rather the last 4 episodes, which I'm just going to lie and pretend we're all just one giant continuous thing that we didn't miss by accident. That is the finale, of course, of Yesterday Wo Tate. I'm Shaden, and I promise you I'm not being visited by the Holy Ghost, as much as it looks like it. It's just very sunny outside. My blinds are really nice looking and all that, but they don't do a great job of keeping the sun out. So I promise you that will solve itself over the course of this podcast, thanks to a certain something called the rotation of the Earth. Thank you very much, Isaac Newton of Astrophysicist History, for making that happen. But anyway, yes, we're here to discuss Yesterday Wo Tate, get this signed off, put away for good, and get some of our problems and positives. There are positives about it out of the way. But of course, joining me for this, this swan song for this show is, of course, the Subtle Doctor.
Hello, fam. I hope everybody is doing well, feeling as safe and healthy as possible right now. And I will say right now that I got what I wanted out of this show. And I'll tell you what that is after the break. No, we're not going to break. But that's a tease for later on when I will reveal what I mean by that.
I would have laughed then if you suddenly had a massive catastrophic power loss, like when you said, actually, I was just joking. It felt like you were tempting fate there.
I was. So, bring it on, motherfucker. What more can you do this year? What more? I think that fate has played has used up far more of its.
Oh, what's this? My news ticker was just coming with something. Oh my. Doc. I'm so sorry, but Halleys Comet seems to be having some beef with Tennessee. It's just coming right at you.
It's just like a magnet.
Oh god. Anyway, yes, we're going to be doing this in second stream format, which is basically the format we've been doing pretty much fairly constantly as of late.
You know what?
You know what?
Since we're going to have 3, I don't want to name the third one third stream, as I've jokingly referred to it in our text. We have to come up with a different name for all of these. We'll figure it out.
There you go.
Right. Well, no, we can't do that. We'll figure it out.
Why is Hideki Anno going to personally come and punch us both in the face for stealing that?
I mean, if he would do that, then I would absolutely call it. I would love to be punched in the face by Hideki Anno. That would be delightful. That'd be one of the highlights of my life, honestly. Kids, marriage, getting punched by Hideki Anno, and then the podcast below that.
It would just give me the opportunity to say to him, "Hey, look, Ryan, I just thought your show was kind of all right."
That is an opinion that you will update, and it will be soon. It will be very soon.
An opinion I'll update. What kind of dystopian novel writer are you? Fuck's sake, man.
I just think that you should be.
It's your opinion.
You should be more generous to Gunbuster, is what I'm saying, because I'm sure that's the show you're talking about, the Hideki Anno.
Let's talk about Evangelion.
No, I know.
But your points, I'm sure, will still apply. So yes, this being second stream format, that means there is no long rambling plot summary, riffs, asides, that kind of thing. We're going to get straight to talking points. But as part of going into talking points, we are also going to, of course, provide context where appropriate.
And we got patron questions.
We do indeed. We have patron questions that we'll cover firstly. If you yourself are not a patron and are catching this on the free-to-air, or maybe you might be, I don't know, illicitly streaming it through some sort of satellite system, maybe about the CIA, I don't know. Hi, CIA folks. I hope you're enjoying this show. Please stop spying on me and everyone else while you're at it. Anyway, whether or not you are part of a clandestine government organization or you're with legitimately interested in supporting us, you can find our patron at patreon.com/Warui Deshou. There is currently a redesign underway of our patron incentives and rewards. We've already discussed that on our mainline listeners podcast, so I won't currently repeat that right now, but do keep your eyes peeled for that. Anyway, one thing that I should mention is, of course, that because our patron incentives, Doc's also checking is that your Google Glass settings there?
I was peeling my eyes.
I see.
It's keeping them peeled for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So, one of the perks of being a patron is the ability to ask us questions about any show that we're covering as we cover them.
And get answers.
Yes, we're
I mean,
not
if
so
you
like.
were if you are not a patron, you could ask us questions, but we ain't got to answer them. We could blow you off. If you're paying us,
I could just make shit up.
we have to
But then
answer
again,
you.
that's what I do anyway. So, all right then. Anyway, so with the first question, this one comes from Kate Rose, and this was one that was also asked of listeners. So I'll repeat this one here. For the finale, what did you like best about each show? Was there a character you resonated with, or one that did not work for you at all? And if you had known how it would end, would you have still covered the show, and your reasons why?
Oh man, this
Ooh,
is the perfect question for this show. I'm so excited to answer this question.
I'll let you go first then.
Okay.
In that case, fire away, my good sir.
All right. What did I like about the show? Well, in my opinion, Shadon, anime romances exist for one reason and one reason only, and that's to fuck you up. And I said to myself, you know what? I may have been approaching this wrong, this whole viewing experience, because I have not kept that little fact in mind. After I watched Golden Time, I told myself, these shows are just here to fuck you up. I should have remembered that. So what I really liked best about the show is me going, you know what? Here I am. Fuck me up. And it did. It really did. And I loved it.
Punching you effects, you know.
Yes, it really did. I mean, like, seriously, though. I mean, I say that in all seriousness. And to boot, like, this show is about, like, from the get-go, is about these really flawed people, damaged folks emotionally, trying to relate to each other. And we knew that they'd fuck up and make a ton of mistakes. And they did. And the show just like emotionally yanked me around like a lot. Like I found myself like really getting frustrated with some of the characters, getting super upset in these episodes and other episodes, being really happy about how things are going. Like I liked the emotional roller coasters. I mean, it's, it's what I think that these shows are built to do. And so I think it really succeeded on that front. Character wise, I feel like, did she ask if there's a character you can identify with or that you like?
Resonated with, or one that did not work with you at all?
Okay. I think probably the one that resonated with me the most was Shinako. Because I feel like I can identify a lot with her, the way that...
Constantly cooking for an appreciative bellends?
Right. Yes.
Am I wrong? Am I wrong? No.
No.
Put a pin in that play, by the way.
I think that she is more. She feels a little bit more indecisive than I am, but I can identify with like. I feel like that there's three kind of guiding principles in her life that sort of drag her around by her own subconscious, and that is.
I can already provide you with one of them, which is if it's Ro, say no.
No, she didn't do that. That's the thing. She didn't live by that principle. She lets herself be like dominated by guilt and grief and obligation.
Oh, and I meant in a different sense than what you're saying, but still, you are correct.
And I mean, maybe lets herself be dominated is not quite exactly the right way to put it, but like she's she's kind of in this cage of grief, and her being willing to move on with her life has happened in fits and starts. I mean, I think that she really deep down wants to keep her life kind of frozen in time, and it's just not. It just can't happen.
To live in the snow globe of her youth.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and like, and she, like obligation and guilt kind of go hand in hand for her. Like, she's very quick to put the blame on herself for problems. She's very down on herself, doesn't have a high opinion of herself, and all those kind of things. And sort of the way that she relates to like the opposite sex. Like I again pre my like marriage and stuff, I don't know, like I identify with all those different parts to like varying degrees. And so she's a character that like I think a lot of people like looking on the Crunchyroll comments, my favorite place to find informed, nuanced anime opinions.
Why did you do that? That's Jesus Christ. That's like deciding that you're going to stick your head under the surface of the Amazon Delta. I'm like, oh, you know what? I got bit. Well, what a great fucking surprise that turned out to be. Oh, it's the fire hot thing from World of Warcraft. Like, oh, I'm gonna go play in the fire. Oh, I got hurt. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. But then again, at least it's not, as I understand it, the Crunchyroll comments for Tower of God. Where all the misogynists just came swirling up to the top like a clump of hair that's blocking a fucking train. Jesus Christ.
I've only heard tell of this. I've never actually seen it. But
I'm just gonna say though, I approve of Crunchyroll being 2 for 2 now for their originals. Like enabling and getting into the whole rampant misogyny thing, be it from the audience or in the material itself. Keep it going, Crunchyroll. Shine on, you crazy diamond.
You gotta like. I wish I could like talk to the person on the ground in Japan, like the point person, and just be like, "Look, man, or woman, or non-binary friend." You need to reevaluate your choices.
You know the person doing that is a cishet as fuck, mate. I'm telling you. And I'm just gonna say, like, the answer that they'll give you is dickhead's got money. There you go. I've solved it. I've solved the mystery of why Crunchyroll keeps making original material that's just seems spec for shitheads. But hey, here we go.
Like I said, so the comment section, a source for nuanced and intelligent anime opinions. They hate Shinako. Hate the shit out of Shinako.
Right. Well, she's a woman, of course they do.
Well, bingo, right? I mean, like, it's a woman who is indecisive and therefore very frustrating.
Put out for him.
Which is not to say, I think, like, that if you get frustrated with her, you're like a sexist or whatever. Because she is indecisive. No. She is hypocritical to a degree. But again, these are all things that, like, when I find myself getting annoyed or whatever, I step back and think, like, if you think about, like, this is like a real person rather than just sort of a story for my entertainment,
yes,
you totally understand it. And she really does come off at, like, I think they all come off as pretty, like, three-dimensional figures. So
yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And just to finish off the question, is there a character that didn't really work for me? I don't think so. I kind of liked everybody. I mean, liked is I use that in a very specific way. I think everybody in the story had at least the 4 principal characters in the key art. They all had like a function, and they all contributed to that roller coaster of emotion that I spoke of. And so I think to be like, well, I have to take this character out, that wouldn't work. And then I don't want to fix any of them really, because again, I think the part of the show, the aspect of the show that made it like an emotional topsy-turvy thing was that these characters were all very, very flawed. And I got mad at them at different times, like I said, but I think that's all to like the greater purpose of the show and how it's meant to work.
God. Yeah, no, I actually can't really disagree with comments, and the funny thing is Kate's question is like the loaded shotgun blast, because there's a lot to cover and a lot of ground I've got to go through before I can even start discussing any of this. So I'm going to just bring this back briefly, and I know that you're already probably going to hate me for evoking this, even though we'd like buried it underground and sealed it in the earth yesterday. I just want to go back to listeners for a moment, just to.
I don't hate you. I can never hate you. Come on.
Oh, anyway, never say never. Never say never. But the thing is, right? Like we had this exact same question set for listeners yesterday, and it's interesting how like in answering this question for listeners and yesterday, I broadly have similar overall feelings on them, which is net negative, unfortunately. But the
Oh,
complexity of which is much more like up there for yesterday as opposed to listeners. Like listeners, I approached it in basically the sense of I don't care. Like, it wants me to care, but it's not giving me any reasons to do so. Whereas yesterday did make me care, but then I had other problems with it that kind of like poisoned the well of sorts. Um, but the thing is, Doc, like you spoke about like how you related to Shinako and like how it was you at a particular point in your life pre your marriage. Um,
and at
I
different
think
times, at
in a
different
different,
times, like the pre-marriage point was just kind of how she awkward was so awkward around the opposite sex, painfully, awfully, terribly awkward, and very bad at picking up signals and things like that, like, yes, her sort of dealing with her grief in a protracted manner I could relate to at a different point in my life. Her being driven by guilt, I'm glad you said this, it allows me to clear this up. Her being fueled by guilt is something I can relate to at all points in my life, every day. No, I've gotten better about that thanks to therapy, but it seriously used to be like it used to be the fucking horse-drawn chariot that pulled me around. My entire life is feeling guilty about shit. But anyway, sorry.
no, you're right to point out that there is like a granularity to that. And in the same way, like I've got to talk about my own history, which is, well, when you spent 13 years as an eligible bachelor despite your best efforts, like, you're not going to be able to go into this work without feeling at least called out in some way or, relating to characters in certain ways. And that's the thing. Like, I think that this work certainly is one of those examples where everyone will go into it differently and come out with a different feeling on it. And that's fine. Like, we bring our, experiences in time. It's like I said, even with listeners or even stuff like Erica 7, like, or anything really. You can't approach like stuff like this clinically. And the funny thing is when you mentioned about the Crunchyroll comments, I think the reactions from all those people where they hated Shinako, like it really does just peel the veil away and show the ugly truth about the way these people react to it and what it means about them as people. But yeah, I would be lying if I said that. Oh, my clock works. Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, I installed a timer for the clock now, so I don't have to actually manually turn it on anymore because I'm just that lazy. Anyway, small victories aside, like the thing for me is that I like Kate's question there is like, is there a character you related to or is a character that didn't work for you? And I've got the most unusual answer of all, which is all of them to both. Because there's been times where I've been in the situations or felt the same way as pretty much all four of the main characters, and similarly also hated them for the behavior that they've shown. But that doesn't mean, of course, I hated them because I never did that behavior. Quite the opposite. So, I'd be lying if I said the show didn't get to me in various ways and it didn't like basically go, okay, look, there's some things about you, like, that you might want to work on a little bit here and there. I mean, there's stuff particularly in the final episode that I'll be talking about later. So it's a complicated, messy thing for me, this show. And that's why I like it. But as I said, I have a net negative view on it, and that's because everything else that kind of just encapsulates it, I think, makes it fall apart a little bit, save for the animation and the storyboarding, which is still really good all the way till the end. Just to answer the rest of Kate's question, I think for me the best thing about this show is like, and this is going to be like me building up towards a talking point later, is that you said about how anime romances are meant to like fuck people up. I agree.
Nobody ever gets what they want.
I agree, but I think there's a second thing that romance in general can do, which is to offer what I'm going to describe as philosophy, quote unquote. Like, sometimes we can get engaged in romances sheerly for the fun of like the drama. I mean, Macross has that element, love triangles. We can enjoy the love triangle just for the competition element, like who's best girl, like shipping is a part of that as well, and there's a value to that, like, even if its show is just literally here's like
Well, this
these
is
two
more than
girls.
that. This is so much more than that. Because like,
I know. I'm speaking like in a vacuum.
Yeah, and like that, fuck me up is not really a thing to say to the Macross love triangle. You know what I mean? Because like, it's like there, and it's good, and it's a great part of the show. but there's so many other ways to get invested in the show and points of investment that I don't find I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not doing justice to the love triangles. But just thinking back on my time viewing the show, I didn't find myself like emotionally living and dying based on the romantic bits. I mean, like you said, they were fun, and it was just like, oh, come on, Mirage, or whatever. But this is like so much deeper, where I like wanted to throw my notebook at the wall. You know what I mean?
Well, this is part of what I'm getting at, which is that, like, obviously there can be the drama of being, like, engaged with the characters and like wanting them to succeed. And that's not even necessarily in a competition sense, but more just seeing them happy. But the second element I mentioned was also about, like I say, what I'm going to describe as philosophy, which is, I think that for shows like Yesterday, and certainly not necessarily shows like Macross, although Macross Frontier still has an element of this, in my opinion. The show, like when it shows how these relationships play out and ultimately the end state that they end up in, like can unwittingly endorse certain viewpoints and certain relationship like structures and frameworks and what's expected of each person in it without even necessarily being overt or didactic about it. I think that's kind of an unavoidable reality of when you deal with like particularly messy romance like this, that it is going to be either approving or disapproving of the way characters behave, and therefore it says, well, if you extrapolate it from the characters themselves, that then is it saying to us, hey, you know what, we shouldn't behave or we should behave in that kind of way. Now, granted, that's not necessarily always incredibly overt or like apparent, but there are things in Yesterday that I think fit this bill. Something that I've complained about previously, I'm going to bring back up again because it came roaring back in episodes 9 and 10. I was like, oh, fuck's sake, are we doing this shit again? Are we really doing this again, for God's sake? And obviously the ending of the show as well is also a bit iffy in my opinion. But I have to admit, I think that's also in part because of the adaptation.
Yeah, the ending is very rushed, but that's almost as sort of its own point. Like, yeah, I don't know, it's weird. Yeah,
but I think the ending itself, like in the way it plays out, can be interpreted as that kind of philosophy. Quote. I'm using philosophy like as a filler word here. I'm sure there's something more eloquent I could use for it. But yeah, like, so the point I'm going to get here basically is that, like, yeah, I felt very called out by the show, and it was messy and it fucked me up, as you say, like it did with you. And that's good, as you say. I want to be emotionally edged. I want to, like, be reflective upon myself. Like, when the show has characters do things, I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I've acted like that, and I shouldn't be acting, and maybe I still do for that matter, and I shouldn't be. So that's good. And that's why I'm ultimately, to answer Kate's final point, if you knew the finale went the way it did, would you have still watched it? Absolutely.
Yes.
That is the plus point I'm going to take away from this. Like, I could have taken or left listeners behind. Whatever. It was a piece of puffed rice. That's it. Whatever.
Yeah, but it was like pretty average to slightly above average, right? Yeah.
Yeah. This was a spicy meal that gave me indigestion, and I probably wouldn't necessarily eat it again, but I don't regret trying it in the first place. Yeah, I know, but I'll put my like £5 in the sin bin for comparing anime to food. Sorry about that. But I'll be going into this in more detail later without necessarily getting too personal, because obviously we don't want to do that. But yeah, like, in the end, I still like the show, but I think that there's things that it does that I wish it had done very, very differently. We'll get to that.
So I'm gonna. Okay, I have several points. I like to push back on.
Push it real good.
Okay, I'm trying to think of what would be the best place to begin. I guess I'm gonna. Okay, I'll tackle this point first. The most recent thing you said about the show, and that all shows, how did you put it, endorse or condemn ways of being, and that, if a show, here's at least what I took from your point, if a show does happen to endorse a bad mode of behavior or condemn a good one, then that's a flaw in the show. That there's responsibilities to
That's
teach.
that's not what I mean. Like, because obviously characters can be allowed to fuck up. That's fine. And I certainly don't think that some of the stuff that happens in Yesterday has been endorsed, but some of it very much is, in my opinion. But anyway, but I'm just saying that by default, by having characters end in a certain place once the show concludes, like unless the show is very clear, no, it doesn't even matter because like it'll either endorse us, it'll endorse it say this is a good outcome or this is a bad one, and that can have unintended consequences if what it's ultimately endorsing completely by accident is in turn, something that we wouldn't necessarily agree with. Because I say, like, there's a distinction between endorsing and denouncing.
So I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I think I used to kind of have a more favorable view of that sentiment. But the more I think about it, the more that I think that is very kind of restrictive to art, restrictive to what we can call good art, and sort of puts more responsibility on artists than I think is warranted. Because, I may have said this on a podcast with you recently. I feel like I've talked about this somewhat recently, but when an artist makes a piece of art, they're human in the world trying to figure things out, and they're at a certain point in their life, or they want to evoke a certain point in their life. And it could be really, I know, pop filter. It could be really bad shit. And it could be kind of something that ends aporetically. It could be something that ends in a very sort of bad way. It could be, it could be something that does not sort of, it is not didactic about like promoting good behavior. But I think that artists should be allowed to express those experiences because the human spectrum of emotion, we feel bad shit, and we want to express ourselves and sometimes be angry, or sometimes be problematic, or sometimes be selfish. And again, it's reflective of the point the artist is at in their life at that moment. And I'm speaking here about the manga really itself more so than the anime, which is a much more kind of collaborative part.
Should we just mention, by the way, about the clerical error that happened with this adaptation, which is that it was mistranslated, that it was going to be 18 episodes, which I was initially very excited about. I was like, right, we're casting off the shackles of seasonal like episode like limits and mandates. It's going to have as long as it needs to tell the story it needs, and that turned out not to be true. The 6 missing episodes, quote unquote, are really just like I think side specials that were read in Japan only. But for all intents and purposes, the 12 episodes we got are a complete working of themselves. But boy, howdy, does it show in the final episode that they really, really like hit the nitrous to get to the finish line.
They did. Yes, they did.
Yeah, it really, really shows. I'll just expand on your point there, Doc. I absolutely do agree with you. I'm not saying that we can't talk about problematic issues. I mean, this is a show about problematic people doing problematic shit. But what I'm saying is not in terms of like what happens as the show goes along, but more the end state.
Well, yeah, I think that's what I'm saying.
Well, what I'm also saying though is it doesn't need to end in a state where things are endorsed. It can end in a state where things are denounced. I think that's an inevitable kind of consequence of the way things go, and that's fine whatever way it does it. I'm not saying that we have to have characters like always end in a better place or like learn something. But I think it's just an inevitable consequence of the way events play out that you can read into it. Okay, this is what the show or the work thinks is fine or isn't fine.
How are you not saying that though? I guess is where I'm struggling to synthesize your thoughts into like an argument in my brain, and fully understand your point. Is because to me it does sound like what you're saying is if serialized fiction ends at a place where, well, first of all, you're saying that a show either naturally endorses or condemns behavior, and I don't know that I agree with that. And then,
so you think that like you can just look at the outcome of a show in purely neutral terms?
we'll define what that means.
Well, either that it doesn't like when maybe my word choice is too strong here with endorse and condemn because there's obviously a massive gradient along that. I think. And in turn, I don't think this framework that I'm thinking of here necessarily applies equally to all works either. I mean, if we go back to Macross, like, the love triangle was a part of it, but wasn't all of it. Whereas this is very explicitly in the weeds, in the swamp of like human behavior. And I do think that the show is also at some point suggesting what it thinks is an ideal relationship or particularly ideal gender role. Yeah, we'll get to that.
So that's okay. That's interesting. So I guess I would have to be persuaded about that because I think that you can make a piece of art and you can view a piece of art without saying this is the model of behavior, this is how everyone should be. You could make a piece of art that ends with awful shit happening, and that's what it leads up to because it expresses a feeling or set of feelings that you have, not because you're saying this is the way the world is or this is the way the world should be.
Well, I'm not saying it has to end positively. Like, and the thing is, like, when I say that, like, if it says, okay, this is bad, that doesn't necessarily automatically infer the opposite behavior necessarily. It still allows complexity in what you see there. But anyway, right. Next question. God, that took a while.
Oh wait, well, no.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Oh yeah, no, I have more to push back on, my friend.
Oh yes, you do. You do. Mm-hmm. Go on.
What do you think the show's goals are?
That's a difficult question to answer, in my opinion, because I think the first answer I'm going to give is it wants to tell a story about these. I'm going to say primarily three because I think Row, like if I were to like look at this as like a love square, I think that the one corner of that is less like develops than the others, in my opinion, or at least given less focus.
That's fair. Yep, I agree.
So I think it's mostly interested in telling this kind of love triangle story between Rikuo, Shinako, and also Haru. And I think that the thing it's trying to explore throughout the text is the formative time of a relationship and all the awkwardness and stumbling blocks that come into that or could potentially come into that. Because while this is a certain like set of experiences these characters have, like one of the things I will credit the show with is that obviously you and I have dealt with different things in our own lives in terms of relationships. There is a universality to, a lot of what it discusses. So even though this is very specifically what happens to Rikuo, Shinako, and Haru, like I mentioned, I emphasize with all things I've been in situations they've all been in. So that is the show's credit. And I think that's, that's what it's trying to do. Yeah, basically that, go explore that. And then maybe also get you invested in the characters in themselves. I'm assuming you've got a different perspective, though.
No. I'm pretty much with you, and I would also add like to be entertaining. And if we both agree
I was very entertained by Haru punching Riko in the face. So the Destroyuken played in my head.
So given all the goals that both you and I have stated, do you feel that the show accomplished those goals? Because I very much do.
I'm going to say half and half on that.
How did they not explore the complexities and all that? It seemed like what you said that they did. I mean, just as I hear it, but
they did. But it's related to the points that I had about how the encapsulating elements kind of fall apart. If you'll excuse me a moment, the Holy Ghost has left, so I need to turn the light on.
Okay, not a problem. But yeah, so my whole thing on this would just be that since the show sorry, I was just filling air, Shadon. Since the show did accomplish its goals, which is I think were stated quite well by you, to show flawed people trying in their imperfect ways to get along, move through life, have relationships, make mistakes, and period. that's the goal of the show, and also be entertaining while doing so. I think if you think it did all those things well, then I think being mad at the show really just means it's doing its job and that it's successful.
I don't disagree with you. And as I've said, the problem I have with it is not the core idea of it. That's the universal element. I'm saying it's the execution that bothers me. And this is the point where I should probably elaborate on that, which is that I'm going to go in and say that I think that this show, unfortunately, by merit of being set in the 90s, is very dated as a result. And I'm not talking dated in terms like, oh, check that CRT out, you know? Like,
right.
I don't care about that. I'm talking about how landlines,
big phones,
4:3 aspect ratio,
4:5 VCRs, etc.
Oh, Super Nintendo Entertainment System. I mean, okay,
Rico has the Genesis.
Yeah, he has an 18-bit one. I was like, cute. That's cute.
And Shinako's like, maybe I should rent a movie. What does that mean?
Haru has the most meta line of the entire show, which says that it was a relic from an ancient civilization.
Yeah, that rules. Like, oh, it's a relic from the last century or something. It was so good. I loved that a lot.
It was pretty good. So
too bad Rico was being a dick during that scene. God.
Mm-hmm. He's being a dick throughout a lot of the scenes, and that
holy shit, man. It was.
It hurt me. It hurt me in a way that I felt like they were all regressing. But I'm going to get back to that later. I mean, you said that the characters can make you mad, and they should. But I do think there are times when the show pushed it a bit too much with the way that it was condemning actions of the women versus letting Rico a little off the hook. Both Rico and Shinako make the mistake of not telling Haru and Ruo respectively. But why is Rico then going in on her about that over the phone? I was like, oh god, shut up. But again, we can argue about whether or not that's intentional.
Well, she did that too, like when she said, and granted, going in, quote unquote, is a relative term here. Like Shinako has a different way of talking and relating, and like her saying one thing to Rico could be like the equivalent of Rico saying like something like a bunch of times to someone else, because like everything she says matters and he takes it super duper to heart. But I think it's the reverse. But
the events go in a different order though. Like Rico says that after the reverse has happened with Shinako talking about him, so he should have had some self-consciousness about him. Like maybe I shouldn't point out something that I myself have not done. Makes him come across as a hypocrite.
Right. No, of course. I think they both do, right? Because
well, I think that it applies more to him because of the sequence of events, but we're getting off track here because I want to stick to the original point. We'll come back to this later.
I think this is important though, because
we'll come back. We'll return. The problem, I think, the biggest problem this show has, apart from another thing, which is gender roles, but I'll get into that in a bit, is it being set in the 90s dates it. And I'm not, again, as I say, I'm not talking about the tech here, but I actually kind of am, come to think of it, because we, like you and I, Doc, we're ancient fossils, the pair of us. We've seen the dawn of the internet era and all that. Now, obviously, I wasn't dating at the time that AOL really came around because I was too young for that. But the social paradigm that exists in yesterday of neutral territory, which I'll come back to in a bit. It's still there. That is still a concept, and that's that's part of the universality of this. But the manner in which the show explores it is no longer relevant. It doesn't matter anymore. There are different places in which it could be explored, but it's exploring it in a way that from the 90s that to me makes it feel like it doesn't work. At least makes it feel like it doesn't matter anymore, or feel quite as relevant. And that also for me ties into the gender role stuff. I mean, to address the idea of neutral territory, I think the show was very, very good in showing how Haru was using the convenience store as a crutch to see Rico, because that was a place in which they could engage with each other, or rather she could engage with him with a certain defined set of unspoken rules and allowances. Okay, she's just a customer, she can shout the clerk there all she wants, you know what I mean? But then obviously when he quits the convenience store and starts working at the photography studio, there's no public domain anymore. That lifeline for her is now gone. And I thought that was really neat. That's the thing that I think still works. But I do think that also how often do you necessarily? I mean, it's not going to say it's unheard of course, but I think that it would have been better if the show had expanded that into things that were more modern, like the idea of, say, chat rooms. That's a neutral territory of sorts. And there's also the things that go with that about, like, not knowing someone's true identity, their sort of full identity because they're online, that kind of thing. I think that, like, basically the point I'm getting at is that I'm not sure who this show was made for. Well, I think that might be unfair of me to say. Like, I think that I think it was made for, like, basically people who wanted, like, a mature, like, look at the formation of a relationship. But it's in that uncanny valley where it's, like, out of time. It's not either old enough to feel, like, quaint, like something from, say, the turn of the century, where things were so dramatically different. That the end itself can be interesting to look at, but it's also not, like, modern enough, in my opinion, to reflect the way that we currently interact with each other and form relationships.
I guess maybe I've just been out of the game too long, but I don't think that having the ability to go in a chat room now makes these relationships unrecognizable. Like,
no, I'm not saying it's completely unrecognizable, but I mean, I did praise after all the idea, the convenience store thing.
Yeah, well, what I mean is, like, to say then that it is dated and like, who is it for, and we can't learn anything from it, I think is, in my opinion, is like a step too far. Just, because the show, I mean, certainly, like, having the ability to text people and use cell phones, it's not a small thing. It doesn't mean like it would change certain plot points about the show, but I don't think it would change them as people. And
I don't think it should either. No, I don't think it should.
Right. And so, like, the story is about, like, these people, and they would make similar mistakes, if not the same mistakes, given the tools. And so, I mean, I think at the core of the show, that's what it's about. Like, no matter if they have, SMS to bounce off of each other and interrelate or not, like,
certain behaviors in the show that, like, feel out of place or, like, out of time, like Haru hanging outside Riko's apartment because she has no means to get a hold of him anymore. That's a thing that I think, if it happened in the modern day, like, you'd think she was stalking him, and maybe she was, but, like, with the other means that she would have at her disposal if she lived in the modern time, like, she wouldn't probably do that. She'd maybe instead be messaging him essentially. This is the thing I'm talking about, trying to keep it relevant to a modern audience, because obviously you and I, Doc, like, we're oldies. But imagine if you're, like, growing up, like, when you were born in, say, 2000, you watched this show for the first time. I'm not sure how you would feel about it. Like, would you, like, get behind it, or would you think to yourself, hold on, this doesn't reflect my reality or the way that I've interacted with people necessarily, in terms of how I go about it and the means I do so. I'd say there's a universality to it, but I think that the execution thereof is odd. And it was a thing written of its time. It was a manga in the 90s. That makes sense. But that then begs the question, why not, as part of the adaptation, bring it into the modern era by making the necessary changes to do so?
Well, given the fact that anime in this country tends to be a very young fandom, and it weeds out its old fans. The old adage of...
are we on the chopping block? Are you and I going to get shot by the anime police?
We maybe so. Our time it cometh.
Fuck the pigs.
Well, so the old adage is that, like, you're an anime fan when you're young, and you're an anime fan for 2 years. On average, and then you move on.
Right, that's it. Bye, everyone. Podcast over.
And you move on to other things, right? And that is like a data-driven statistic. I don't know how recently it's been checked. I think that's the sort of thing that you need to keep verifying over time, but it's fairly recent. And given that, along with, like, the comments on, like, CrunchyRoll, like, the show is getting a lot of comments by presumably young fans. I think young people would have no problem relating to the show. I don't think that they're going to look at it and be like, this has nothing for me, because they can't text each other. And I don't know, I just nothing ever like I never looked at anything, even Haru hanging outside of his place. I mean, that's like a thing that people would still do even though they have cell phones, I think. Like I didn't ever look at anything and think, boy, like no one does this anymore. But maybe that's just me.
Fair enough. And to your point, though, I think that I'm not saying that it's necessarily makes the show bad. Like, if you want to put on a sliding quantitative scale of like 0, -100, 100, I'm just saying this puts it as a standing start rather than what I think could have been really interesting, which was to have something that goes this deep into the weeds, cover the modern ways in which relationships form, like where there is, of course, a lot of digital elements to it. I think that that could have been really, really fascinating to have it tackled with this kind of approach. But yeah, like it just, I don't know, like I say, there are a lot of universal bits in this that I liked and I did feel quite called out on, I'm not gonna lie. But I think that the show would have been ultimately better if it had, come into the modern age. And I think that's reflected in some of his attitudes towards particularly Shinako, but a little bit about Haru as well. And there's certain things I found a bit egregious about that, but I'm going to get to that later. I think we're still on Patron Questions, actually, aren't we? Shit.
We are, yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else to add to that, Doc? Any other points to bring up about that or anything to respond to me on it?
No, let's move forward.
Let's push on. All right. Mirror on the Wall writes in and says, how happy are you that you're done with these shows forever?
Oh, another one.
Well, God, I think looking back on yesterday, like I don't regret my time with it at all. Like I say, it made me think about myself. It made me reflexive, and I think that in of itself is a really, really positive point in its favor. But I can only speak to my own experience, of course. I can't speak to that of others, and so in some way, I feel like I'm always trying to unconsciously divorce my own reaction for it, and that as something being more critical, which is futile. It's a futile effort. I think that the answer I'll give to that, though, is I don't feel like I did at the end of Eizouken, where I was like, I was left happy but wanting more, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I definitely don't think that Eizouken would have benefited from just going on into perpetuity. Like, I think that ending at the point they did. Look,
How dare you?
Do you really want to dilute the formula?
Get him. Seize him.
Seize him.
Anime jail.
No, just put me on the chopping block, mate. I've had my time. But yeah, like I think that I don't have quite the same reaction. Like, you know what? It made me reflective, and now I'm going to move on. So if you want to call that happy, if you want to call that happiness, like that it's over, then yeah, I guess. But I didn't hate it, although as I say, there is a bit that I found questionable, which I'll get to in a bit.
I really fucking enjoyed it, and I'm sad it's over. I like things that make me feel strongly, even if it's like a certain kind of frustration, right? Not like obviously there's like that dull plotting frustration of, your Sherlocks and your Darling and the Franks and all that bullshit, where you just feel like it's a waste of your time. But I always found this to be very relatable, very I was really emotionally invested, and it's always interestingly written most of the time. And like, I don't know, I'm sad we don't get the rest of it, or we don't get to see it. Like, on its own time.
Yeah.
Like,
now that you put it in that way,
itself, yeah. I wish we could have seen it, like, given another season or something like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As much as I might gripe, like, it's also, again, one of those mitigating factors where the show wasn't given the necessary breathing room. And that I mean, I think you and me, like, for all the disagreements we've had thus far, or all the, like, whatever you want to call it, like, I think we could both definitely agree that the final episode of the show just goes at Mach 12. And it shows really hard.
Really fast,
which is a huge problem for the conclusion, in my opinion. Even though I can see how it probably works in the manga,
totally,
where a lot more time in narrative time will have passed, and therefore what happens feels more genuine as opposed to, well, we'll get to it.
And that, anyway. I mean, and I think the problem you're going to say with the conclusion is that the fact that, like, Shinako and Rikuo are not these black boxes. Like, we can see into them. We're given glimpses based on their behavior, based on their inner thoughts, based on their body language and expressions, how they feel. And again, how they think that they feel, but also how they really feel, if it's different than that. And I did it again.
Ding. Ding.
And so the fact that it feels like really, especially Rikuo's sort of desire to get with Haru, and to some extent Shinako's realization that she wants to be with Ro, they just come on so quickly. And it's like, usually the show is so good about like breadcrumbing and, again, like showing over a long period of time that the characters have these feelings and everything, but they just don't get that for the final big twist for them to go to these younger partners. And it's such a shame because like the arc before that, when Shinako and Rikuo try out a relationship, I think is given exactly the right amount of time and complexity and nuance, and it's just so beautiful. It's so good. And
that's handled really well. Yeah, and unfortunately, the time compression, the Final Fantasy VIII problem, if you want to call it that, element of this causes the ending to have a pretty grim connotation to it, in my opinion, which is, it's okay, you've broke up with her, but there's someone waiting just around the corner, and you just go fling yourself right into her arms, and it's fine. It's fine, Also note that Shinako doesn't get to do the inverse with Ro, which is, I mean, that would have made it better, but I do think it's kind of iffy that it's the guy who gets like the best outcome here. Like,
I mean, we know that was on its way, but we don't get to see it. And
well, that's my point, though. Yeah,
exactly. And I think you're right that given time and proper execution of the character beats, it would not have felt like Rikuo kind of
the rebound girl
failed his way into success here, or she's my backup, because like certain pieces are there in place. Like we've never seen him, at least I've never seen him be so anxious. Like the boy's having a panic attack on the bus to get to Haru.
Can I just say about that scene, as someone who has like been in public transit to go on a date or meet with someone and felt that sense of nervousness, I actually felt that was kind of overblown. Not in the terms of his mindset, but he looks like he was having a fucking heart attack. I felt they were overcooking the physical behavior, in my opinion.
Maybe they just, I see what you mean.
Yeah, like that was a bit extreme in my opinion, but I think that his inner monologue was certainly very well done and very incisive, I should add.
Maybe they just didn't want to maybe they didn't want there to be any bones about like what was going on, because
he's sweating, I'm like, holy shit.
Like breathing really hard, holding his chest, like, he's basically having a panic attack, and you can, I guess it's like, you could have, your mileage may vary. You may have an issue with it if like if you're thinking like, oh man, like this is just sort of butterflies before a date. Like this is, and if that's where you're coming from, like it does feel like they're being over exaggerating it. But if you're thinking like he's having a little bit of a panic attack here because it's everything how he fucked up with her and did her wrong is hitting him, and he's like not only feeling guilty about that as he should, it's fucking karma, like here. Like he's feeling just a little bit of the shit that Haru felt. But he's also doubting his own motives because he's like, am I just being selfish? Do I just want her because I know that she's gonna accept me? Like, what am I doing? Like, it's all really good, but it feels like just this island when it should feel like way more connected to and organic, and like we naturally get there, but like we don't have time to do that. It
No,
sucks.
exactly. And I think part of my problem with the physicality of that, I mean, you are quite right in that I shouldn't write off so dismissively because there probably could be people who get very anxious, who might have that happen, might have a full-blown panic attack. But there are two things I would say to that in this particular instance where I feel it's overcooked, which is the first off, as you say, where's the build-up? We go straight from scene with Shinako. We don't even get like a 3 month later line, which would have solved everything. Well, not everything, but it would have helped. Like if we had a definitive like idea of the passage of time, and then that would, I think, would have done wonders. Although knowing this show, they'd put it in Comic Sans, and it would have made my eyes bleed. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. I will say though, also, there was one hint that I thought was quite neat on the rewatch, which is when Haru visits Rikuo's apartment for the first time. They obviously share like coffee, and she goes on her way. And the scene that we get after she leaves is of Rikuo sat at his kotatsu, I think it is, and her coffee mug is still there, and he's just kind of looking at his own. And like that's a powerful moment. Like he doesn't put it away immediately; he just lets it sit there. I think there's like a sense of longing from that. But to be honest, that's all there is. And the other issue is that, as you say, because they're not black boxes, that puts greater expectations from the audience on us knowing this. Like if he's ever like felt for Haru, like if that's happened. I mean, if you want to say like they've got good banter with each other, then I've got a cold hard lesson for you folks, which is the good banter between a man and a woman don't mean shit.
And let me just tell you, I've wrote this down specifically in my notes because while it is true that they remain a bantery couple even after he has confessed to her and they kiss and they love each other, I think that there's an issue that I had with the show is that like it doesn't really seem like the show necessarily has the best idea of the line between having good banter and someone just being an asshole, or like, you know what I mean? Because like good banter in a couple, like there's what can help you appreciate it, like with, I don't know, Senjo Gahara and Araragi, or if you listen to So Come and Kill Me between Annie and I or something like that, like is, you know, that there's like a foundation of love underneath that is a superficial fun kind of element, right? And that they don't really feel that way about it. But when fucking Rikuo is like letting Haru into his house and just being like, just sit there, don't touch anything, I'm like, this is not good banter. Like he's just being a jerk. And like, why, like,
Or he beat his shit out about her breakfast.
Yeah. Oh my god! A standard-looking breakfast.
I hate that for a reason.
He's such a d-bag.
But it's such a shithead for that.
God damn! What a fucking tool.
Speaking of shit, can I add something on about the finale that also bothered me? Which is him saying to Haru, like, "Oh, anyway, Shinako dumped me," and I'm like, "It was a mutual agreement. Why are you tarring Shinako for this?"
I feel like I feel like in some kind of way there. Tarring Shinako. I love that. Like, that's a perfect, because like I totally get where you're coming from. But in my opinion,
it makes it very egocentric.
What he's trying to do is not make him Shinako look bad. I think he's trying to make her look good here. In his own kind of way, like that she, I don't know, like had agency, and that like basically he doesn't want Haru to feel bad that Shinako's brokenhearted because she got left by Rikuo, and that she'll have to have some kind of like guilt about it. I feel like that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
But just being honest about it, I feel like would have been the better approach.
Yeah.
And eventually, I mean, he the way he describes it is what happened. But anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I just think that it's very, very self-centered. Like, it makes him seem like a valuable object that's just been discarded. I'm like, fuck off, man. Dude, just shut your fucking mouth, honestly. Like I saw as soon as this was happening, I was just like, oh god, it really is going this way. And again, I confess, like, I got called out on this stuff, so don't think I'm anyone special. And two, I recognize that the show, like, was gonna inevitably fall, like face plant by having to compress this moment in such a short amount of time in the final episode. Like, it's a shame. It's not intentional, although something else is. But yeah, like that, I just didn't like this whole finale, like where he and Haru, like, get together. I'm like, no. Although I will say this. I am very glad that Kansuke, Haru's crow, doesn't just fly off at the end because she no longer needs him. If that had happened, I'd have thrown my monitor out the window like, oh my god.
Well, my work here is done.
That would have been hack as fuck, mate.
Johnny!
I really thought that was going to happen because, like, he was like delaying the, like being like badly behaved, in the cage when she's trying. I was like, she's going to try and lay him out. He's just going to fly off, and that's the end of it.
It was fate keeping them together. That was a little. That was like the American rom-com kind of cheese that I just loved. I'm just like, oh, popcorn. Like, it was so stupid. I need to
emote you doing that gesture. Holy shit. That was incredible.
I loved it. I loved it. It was some John Cusack bullshit. Like, it was so great. Like, because she didn't get on that bus, she's able to, and it was the crow because he knew, because the hand of fate was at work. So much. Good.
So in the long roundabout way, I actually think that brings us to the end of our patron questions. Holy shit.
Well, much like Shinako and Riko, we took the long way.
Oh, snap! He's back. He's at his best again. He's at the height of his powers once more. I love it. But yes, thank you very much to our lovely patrons. Firstly, for your patience in us covering this show and along with listeners. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, as I say, we'll be back to a more regular schedule at this point. And thank you very much for your questions as well. Keep them coming with other shows as we go along. Mm-hmm. Right, okay. Funnily enough, I think all the discussion we've had has actually eliminated a lot of what I wanted to talk about, but I've got to have some other things.
Me too.
So I'm going to get the big complaint out of the way now so I can talk quasi-positively at the end, which is about where I felt this show was incisive. And I think that's why, although, as I say, I do think that it needs to be carpeted in, like, something more modern to help it, like, gel better with a modern audience, I still think that it has value as something that can, like, educate people like me on, like, the behaviors that, we probably shouldn't be engaging in. You have a finger up in your ear, so I can see that.
I just want to know that, or want to say that along the way, what you're going to say, could you answer a question for me? I want to know what moment in the show
when did you become a fucking patron? Pipe down. Pay me $5.
An it on my tab, sir.
I kid. Put it on my tab. I kid. Go on.
When were you the most gutted by the show? Because I have an answer, just no doubt, a clear winner. It was the most, I think, just the air was let out of me. Oh! Probably, I want to know what yours is.
Probably when Haru is at the bottom of the stairs to Riko's apartment and sees him and Shinako come around the corner.
Mm-hmm. So is that for the whole show or just this set of episodes?
The whole show, I'm going to go with, in my opinion. Because
it's a rough one.
I've been there. It sucks. It is.
Oh no, you've been always.
But on top of that, it's no one's fault. Like, the thing that I think really works here is that no one's actively malicious. Like, okay, Shinako and Riko, they're guilty basically of a crime of tardiness. They needed to nut up and just tell Ruo and Haru respectively that they are together. And funnily enough, like, Ruo like goes off on one when he finds out, and my response to that was
fucking dick.
I was just like, bro. I was just like, go fuck yourself, you little twerp. Like, you have no right to their lives, no right to their business. Let them be their own thing,
Yeah, Ro can go to hell.
If anything, what I found funny about that, and it's so true of, like, a lot of cishet men, and probably myself included at various points in my life, is that very reaction proves very much exactly why he cannot be with Shinako. Funny how that works, isn't it?
He's like, what? Why didn't you tell me? Did you think you'd be a pain when I got mad? It's like, yeah, motherfucker.
What do you think you're doing right now?
You fucking...
God.
I mean, like, if you're going to grab her, like, and not let her go in the previous episode,
yes, that's
like,
right.
I mean, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility. If they got together, he would physically abuse her. In a moment of, like, being so angry, he might slap her.
I'm not.
He can't
so
control
sure.
himself. He cannot control his anger.
I think that's a bit of a bridge too far from. I mean, okay, yeah, obviously grabbing her from behind, not letting her go, that's a bit much. And maybe I'm playing it down, perhaps because I don't have enough like experience of like this, or maybe I'm just not. You know what I mean, basically. But I think that's a touch too far. But
well, I should say I don't even necessarily mean habitual. It could be a year or two from now. Right. But in a moment of anger, him not being able to control himself, he might hit her. I would not put it past him at all.
So you're saying that it's not that he's there right now, but you can see how this is the beginning of a path that would lead him to that point.
I just don't think he can control his anger, and he's not even drinking right now.
Oh, fuck.
He's a kid who can't drink yet.
Wow. Well, that just makes me feel all the better about the fact that I laughed when we got to the post-credit scene, and Ruo was like, being celebrated for living on his own. I was like, congratulations on living on your own. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Stay in your prison, you little shit.
Fuck that kid, man. I mean, I say this as someone again who like I appreciate the character and what he meant to the story, but like I loved to hate him. I think Ro's problem though, like I mentioned before about how if this is a love square, he's the weakest corner of it. I think the problem is that conceptually he exists more as a character for Shinako's benefit rather than his own. I mean, there are certain bits about him having his own like identity issues with his brother, and I will be very favourable to the show here and say that it's consistent on that to the end. Even in the final episode, there's a wonderful little moment where we have the flashback of him winning first prize for the drawing competition, but it's a picture of his brother, so it's not even his victory still. Even in a little way, it's not his. And like, and you know what? Like that is the show's greatest strength. It handles the visuals and the dramatic staging so fucking well. And I'll now use this to wonderfully segue back to that scene I mentioned. The staging of that, like I'm always a sucker for power plays of like, hey, here's people on stairs above you, below them, like that kind of thing. The close-ups of Haru's face, like take her out, like Shinako hiding behind Riko to like cover her shame. The body language was so good.
Yeah, the body language of this show, save for the bus scene, which again I have issues with, but I can understand people finding more relatable. It was great. It was such a phenomenally well done moment, and I felt so bad for Haru that she tried to compose herself. She tried to like be stoic, to be made of stone, and it just was too much for her.
Can I confess something to you?
She's tried so hard.
I know. Can I confess something to you right now?
Yeah, go on.
I too have been in this situation that you speak of, except I've been on the other side of it. I've been in the Rikuo role.
But I have to say though, like, just as a reminder, I think that's to the show's credit that okay, Rikuo does some shitty stuff. There is no two ways about it, but he's not like future Ro, like we just suggested. Like it's people fucks up, but the thing is, people can and do fuck up, and they will. And there are fuck ups all around on every side. No one comes away from this show clean. Not even Shinako, who herself might seem like the beacon of purity and wholesomeness, and in some way she is, but that in of itself can be a problem.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I've been the guy that didn't tell someone that they should that he's dating someone that they like. Basically, that's the scene between them and Ro played out, but the person who was opposite Annie and I was way cooler about it than Ro was. And it turned out to be like, again, someone who I am still with, 15 years later, not like, like I went behind your back, or I didn't fully tell you that I was going out with someone and then 3 months later we're not going out. Like, that's why that guy and I were able to, he's one of my best friends in the world, actually, and we both had feelings for the same girl. And that's why we were able to reconcile. One of the big reasons, A, because we're good friends, and B, because he's like, you know what, like, you're marrying this person, so, you know, it's not like you went behind my back or whatever with just some random person. Like, this is someone you really care about. And
well, that's it. And then when you start framing it as a competition, it then almost in a way turns the person that you're interested in into a prize. Yeah, and I think that was the bad thing on Harry's part, to view it like that, as Rico as someone to claim. And like I say, you know, no one's clean this, but I appreciate the show had the maturity to at least not have Rico and Shinako be cartoonish in the fact that they were just gaslighting Harry or anything. I could totally see a lesser version of this work being the case where Rico on his own, or maybe even with Shinako, like in a very EastEnders soap opera kind of way, where they're just deliberately being cruel to her. The only cruelty that really happens in this show, save for some shittiness from Ro, but even then, like, I can at least understand, but not condone, of course, the reasoning why. You know, like, it's very human behavior. It's very flawed. So, yeah, I definitely... That scene, like, woofed. But...
Okay. Well, yeah, just the directing and staging in particular is so amazing in the show. I'll tell you the moment that the show I felt the most gutted was when Shinako and Rico are in the midst of their, you know, ill-fated relationship. And, you know, you kind of go up and down because, like, they have a moment of just incredible awkwardness where you feel like, oh my God, what the fuck, dude? Like, they're gonna end it right here. And then good things happen and they have some chemistry and they have a talk and things are going well, and you're on one of the highs. They're in her place. They finish dinner, and things are just going great. They seem like they're just getting on very well. Ring, ring. The phone rings. Hello, Moshi Moshi. It's Ro, and she says,
"Caught a fish this big."
Yeah, and
oh God,
she's talking to him, and then she says, "No, no one's here." Oh my God. I was just like, fucking hell, Rico. That shit must hurt. You are a strong man to, like, not just be like, all right, we need to have a talk. You got to tell this boy something's going on. I can't keep doing this. You can't. No one. Here's your boyfriend's here.
He should have gone, okay, Shinako, can I have the phone, please? Can I have this phone, please? Okay, yes, thank you. Hi, Rue. Go fuck yourself. There you go. Done. Job done. But incidentally, let's not get Rue off the hook here. Like, he seems to think that Shinako is like some sort of takeaway service that he, you know, just actually comes and cooks the food at yours rather than just leaving it at your door. But it's now actually a good time for me to lay into my criticism about the gender role thing. This is an expansion on something that I've discussed before.
Sure, go for it.
Right.
Only women should cook, Shadon. That's just how it goes. I'm being facetious.
Well, that's what the show seems to be getting at here, because it belabors that point so much from so many of its characters.
It's very stereotypical.
Yeah. I mean, even to the point where in the same episode, there is a direct comparison being made between Haru's cooking and Shinako's. Like, that's the thing I was talking about philosophy before, and like what it's trying to intone is an ideal thing. And if you want to take it on face value, like as presented, it seems to suggest that like the women should be cooking, and that's kind of it. Like, for all that, like, I understand that Rico and Shinako's relationship was awkward because of the external factors of the people in their lives, which is a valid thing to explore, and I don't think should be changed. The fact that they don't otherwise do anything or talk about anything really other than that, save for, I think, Rico saying, let's go watch a film at I think in like the second to last meal before they break up. Like, it's very, very odd. No one seems to do things together in this show. Like,
you're talking about Rico and Shinako too?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And they're talking about the weather a lot. They're talking about the fucking weather, dude. And I had a point here. Oh, and like a moment for me where I was like, okay, these two just don't belong together, was when he gave her the recycled Christmas gift, and he said, he finally admits, like, okay, this is something I bought for my boss. And he says, because I would have no idea what to get you. I'm like, you're in love with this girl. You've known her for years. You've been friends. You don't know what to give her as a gift? Come on.
Well, the thing is, I'm not going to say that he necessarily wouldn't have known. But what I'm going to say is, if that were the case, maybe he should have asked her.
But he said that. He said, I wouldn't have known what to get you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If he should have asked someone then. But I will also concede the fact that he had no idea he'd be seeing her. But then again, like, it is Christmas, you should probably give it to her anyway separately, even just if they were friends. I don't know. It's messy. It's the way the show works, where things fall into laps and all that. But yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think he had to get her something, but just the fact that he would admit to not knowing what gift to get her. I'm like, this is what planet are you living on, man? Like, you... I don't know. I don't know, man.
He should have gotten her a raven. So her raven could afford Harry's raven. It could have been a Pokemon pal. You know I'm right.
Kansuke. I choose you.
But to come back to my original point, though,
yes.
like, there's something very gendered about the way that the women and the men act in this show that I think is reflexive of the time it was written in, and it really, really feels weird as fuck to me. That they go to, like, I think it was episode 10, where even Rose, like, you're not going to come round and cook for me as often. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. How about you learn to cook, you little shit? Or how about Rico? Okay, I'll credit Rico this.
Not.
I think when Yuzahara came round and stayed at his, he cooks for her once, if I recall correctly. I could be wrong on that. But, like, how about we get more to these relationships than, they spend time together and, like, the girl cooks for
together.
Like,
it is shorthand for they're hanging out together. Let's not make anything Ro does representative of our gender, please. Because I want a slime bag. But unfortunately, he probably kind of is representative, and they both are. But
well, do you think he was in the CrunchyRoll comments section? Is that why they're still mad at Shinako? There, I've cracked it. It's all Ro. He's got 500 burner accounts for CrunchyRoll, so he can post the same comment. Fuck you, Shinako, over and over. I figured it.
You're gonna be late for art class, bro. I'm logging on. I'm in. Posting CrunchyRoll comment for the latest episode.
What is 4chan?
Shinako. Yeah, God.
Oh, it makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is a problem I had previously with the whole Minato and Yuzahara episodes, in that it seems to put great emphasis on. Do you remember him? I liked him in the end. He seemed to come to the most mature conclusion than Rico did, and it didn't take him like the entire run of the show to do so.
But I don't trust anyone who would wear a hat like that. I'm just being honest. I would just assume, and this is terrible of me, and there are people that wear such hats and they're good people. If I met this person, I would just assume that they're a piece of shit with a hat like that. Just, sorry.
Well, it could be worse. He could be wearing pinstripe.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, a member of the mob. But so, Doc, do you think I'm like off base here on the whole gendered like role thing? It seems really fucking weird.
I don't think you're off base. I think that it doesn't bother me. It doesn't really bother me too much, and I think, like, what you're saying, the fact that, it's a product of its time is part of it. In a similar way, in a much more kind of flagrant way, Banana Fish was like this in terms of its stereotypes of gay men, because it's, again, anachronistic, very much a product of its time. Something similar is probably going on here. And I guess because I can kind of see it, like, from far away, and because I almost feel like that those, like, the cooking kind of aspect of it, like the commentary or sort of unconscious gender biases were limited maybe to that area. I find myself able to overlook it pretty handily and not knock the show too much for it, but I understand if it bothers you or other people more than it bothers me.
Fair enough then. Well, I'll leave it at that. And I'll let the viewers at home judge. Just pro tip, by the way, would-be cishet male listeners, or in fact, no, never mind cishet, just like lads in general. Learn to cook. Don't make the mistake I did. I didn't really start learning to cook until I was 25. That was a dumb fucking mistake on my part.
Well, I mean, even if you suck at cooking, I think just not assuming that you're owed to be cooked for, and compensating. Like at least they had that moment where his boss was like, "Hey, man, if you let her keep pampering you, you're gonna lose her. You should do something for her." And he called her and was like, "What can I do?" And she's like, "Nothing. I like to do this. Please, I want to do something." And she's like, just pay for dinner." At least that there was like that kind of like attempt. And I think like the lesson, if you're going to take it into the real world, like even if it's not cooking, like again, don't feel like you're entitled to that from your partner. And if they are the one who cooks because they're good at it or they like to do it, try to reciprocate and do something for them of equal value.
You're entirely right. Since 2-3 weeks back, I've actually been able to visit a friend and his wife every week because of the coronavirus lockdown easing. And she, by her own admission and his, is not a good cook. And he does most of the cooking. And the thing is, right, as much as I say like learn to cook and all that, and that applies whichever way you want to slice it, if there is like a mutual understanding here, then I don't mind that either, because not to put it too mildly, but if you're not good at cooking, you could potentially burn the place down. You don't do that.
yeah. That's I'm not a good cook.
But that being said, though, like I'm not saying that if the other person in your relation, I mean, perpetual singles in here, take this for what it's worth. Like the other person in your relationship, like they cook, then you should learn to cook instead. But there should be some reciprocation of some sort, and I did not feel that much from Rico really at all, and I thought this is weird. It's strange, and it feels so endemic to like the way that the characters act and the way that Shinako falls in line with that, and also then with what happens with Yuzahara and Minato. I'm like, is this what the show's trying to intone? Is like a good partner? Now I'll grant you, it does then U-turn on that because it's Haru who ends up winning in the end, and her cooking is. I actually liked the look of her breakfast. I would have eaten that.
It looked good. Yeah.
It was a looking breakfast. I'm sorry it wasn't Hors d'oeuvres or whatever, but
come on, dude. That's standard looking breakfast. What a
it looks all right. I'd have eaten that. But there's something about it that just felt really, really off to me. And maybe that's why I think that your biology is going to vary on your reactions to this, particularly if you're younger. So I don't know. But yeah, the gender thing like is a quirk of the age of the work, and I'm like, I think that I would have not minded as much if I also got to see the characters doing other things and interacting in ways that weren't strictly about I'm in the kitchen making something and then that's it. Like, I mean, I know the 90s were like, a dark, depressing, like, hellscape. But you could do stuff. How about they go out, like, played sports or anything like? I don't know. Go.
They tried to see a movie, but that didn't go well. They tried to go see a kaiju movie.
Haru tries to go see a movie, and then Rico just completely fucks it up right way. So there you go.
That is what they're doing 90% of the time. I mean, there's times when like they go to the park and sit on the benches, or like they try to go to a movie or a gallery, but like just the vast majority of the time, they're going out to a restaurant or they're eating in, and that's gonna, that's the cooking piece is gonna come into it. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just reflective of like the author's kind of preferences for what they like to do. That could very well be, because I mean, for me also, like I'm not a
still never asked and wait for food to be delivered to them.
Well, what I mean is,
I'm joking.
If they're going to hang out with someone, they want to share a meal together and talk. Like that might be their preferred way to like date or something like that. And I mean, I can sympathize because I'm not a very adventurous dater person.
I should have not given you been married.
well, but I mean, is even on dates with my wife or when when we were dating. Sorry. No, it's fine. It's fine. And I told I told her up front, like I may have told this story before, but one of the first things I told her was like, look, you should know who you're getting into a relationship with here or going out on a date with. I'm not going to be someone who's going to take you skydiving or extreme rock climbing. It's just not me. Like I'm all for like going to a bookstore together, going out for me. Like I'm just not an adventurous guy. And luckily we're both like that. We're both homebodies. So in a way I can kind of like sympathize with that. And particularly with Shinako and Ro, like their relationship is so intimate that like having them be together in an intimate setting like the kitchen, it feels like appropriate, and maybe that there's some propriety with her being seen alone with a young man of his age, like when they're not together, like maybe that there's, you know, things that people might think. I mean, I'm not really sure.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And yeah, like, you know, this is again your mileage may vary thing on this show, which applies to everything really, let's be honest. But the truth of it is, like, you know, if you are, as say, like with Doc, like in that kind of relationship where you're comfortable with, basically, as long as you're comfortable with the pace that you set for each other, then it doesn't matter what that pace actually is. Let's be fair here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I, you know, met a lady at the start of the year after New Year's Eve, and then we had she came here, and I will leave the rest to your imagination. But what we discussed at that point was, you know, like what we were looking for in someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, all I'm really after is someone I can just watch Netflix with and just not do much talking. And if you have, you know, any idea of who I am as a person by merit of the fact that I spend most of my time each week talking on a podcast and trying to engage critically with the media I consume, you know full well that that's not a person I'm going to be into whatsoever. But that's not to devalue her perspective. If she does genuinely want that, and without going into detail, there is history involved with that particular lady that justifies that particular viewpoint. You know, like these ways in which we set the pace of like what we want in relationship or the relationships we do have, they don't form in a vacuum.
Right.
They obviously are built up over time from like our experiences, both good and bad. So not to devalue her by like saying like, you know, like her just wanting to chill, do Netflix and chill constantly is a bad thing. That's her thing. It's just not my thing. There's a difference.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Compatibility. It's not between everyone. As we see with Shinako and Rikuro, just simply were better friends than they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And another moment that I really just felt like torn to pieces over the characters was Shinako confessing to her colleague that she felt guilty for not having sex with him yet because they've been dating for 3 months. It's like, you poor woman. God, like, I'm so sorry you feel so guilty for like so many things in your life. It sucks, man. Oh, God.
I agree with you, but now that I think about it, like, it's a bit strange that what I'm about to say here, like, when I say dancing around the issue of sex, I'm not saying that they should have, like, you know, she should have done anything or they should do anything. What I'm saying is that the show seems to not really be willing to call it what it is. They see, and maybe there is, that in itself can be relatable, that you have this unspoken, like, hesitation to it. But I don't know, I feel like I just wish it'd been more explicit in talking about it. I'm not saying that they should have done anything or that the situation should play out differently.
Oh, I am.
There's just something great. Well, okay,
no,
okay.
I'm not. No, I'm totally kidding. Because on the one hand, I feel terrible that she feels guilty about it. Like, no one should feel guilty about that. But also, there were some moments that were so awkward, and I was just like, just bone already. Just fucking bone already. And then the tension will go away. But that's obviously...
Just let it all out.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry.
This is mostly in jest, because that is crushing when, I mean, you know, the reason that she is not doing that is because of like past trauma, and just really needing to take it slow. And I don't know, like it should be respected, and, you know, honestly, they should have talked about it. But
that's also why I think this feels a deal dates in its own right, in that I think that over the past like 2 decades or so since the turn of the century, like there's been less of a taboo about talking about sex and like sexuality and such. Mm-hmm. And that's why, again, to tie in with the whole gender role thing, with the lack of modern technology and the social paradigms that go with that, I think that this is very minor, by the way. I'm talking a lot about this, but this is not a big problem in my opinion, because it isn't. I mean, to boil it down to just them not boning would be very reductive for their relationship and the problems with it. So it's the show's credit that it isn't about that, and that also doesn't mean that there shouldn't be stories about that, of course. But I'm saying in this particular instance, I'm fine with it as is. I just wish that they were more explicit in talking about like I'm not ready to do that right now, rather than being nebulous. I suppose is the word I'm looking for.
Right. Sure. I get you. Talking point I wanted to bring up. I think the direction in the show, as far as shot juxtaposition and cuts, really came into its own over these final episodes. Because when Shinako and Rikuo got together, officially, although secretly still, but unofficially, you got a lot of these moments when you saw one of them in the picture and you would be expecting their partner to come in, but someone else would come into the picture. Like, for instance, you'd have a long scene with Haru, or with Rikuo thinking about Haru or talking to or about Haru. And then you would cut to Rikuo sitting in a restaurant and you'd be thinking, oh, is Haru about to show up? And you hear a voice say, hello. It's like, it's Haru. And then it cuts and it's Shinako. And they did that a bunch, and they did that with the boys too. Like, you would be expecting Rikuo in the shot with Shinako, and it would cut to Ro. And I just loved that. And I didn't think, apart from Ro, some of the time, any of the characters felt like they got sidelined. I mean, maybe Haru to an extent, and Ro to an extent, when the show really did focus on Shinako and Rikuo's sort of ill-fated relationship. But I think it deserved that focus, the lion's share of it. I'm glad that they did that. So, yeah, but yeah, exactly. those juxtapositions ruled. Like, I loved every time I was surprised by that.
Yeah, the show, like, in general, like, beyond the issues I have with certain elements of its adaptation specifically, I think that the strongest facet is definitely the way it's been animated, the way it's been shot, like the use of the flashbacks and the framing. Like, there's a reason that Rikuo is a photographer, like, and that plays such a strong part in the early episodes of, okay, memories, being fuzzy and all that, like the things that linger around afterwards. The fact that Ro's brother, Shinako's, previous love interest, like, we never see his face. He's only ever indistinct, like, mannequin of a person. That's cruel for me to say, but that's true though. Like, he's just more of a mythological figure in their pasts, and the fact that it keeps showing that repeat over and over, I think, is really, really telling and really interesting. So yeah, I agree 100% that the show's, like, strongest element, in my opinion, is indeed, as you say, shot composition, etc. Definitely. All right, my final talking point. Oh boy, this is the moment. So I discussed, like, about being, you brought up the idea of being gusted at a particular scene, but there was a moment that hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt like I'd been punched, because it made me realize it's true, like, that's the way I behave. And the reason I bring this up is not to get this off my chest as some kind of, like, psychotherapy thing, but just to point out that even though I do have problems with the show, this is why I think it's been immensely valuable for me to watch as a person and not as a critic, because it's allowed me to reflect on myself. And that's why I think that it is worth watching this show overall. Like, me and Doc, like, we have our different life scenarios. He's been married for a long time. Me, I haven't even gotten Tinder yet because fuck that noise, but you get the point. So Rico has a line, and he says something to the effect of, I like it when women pay attention to me, and I wished it could go on forever. And I felt that, I was like, that's me. Got me nailed to the wall there, show. You're right. It's true. And I think that made me realize a lot of my behavior and the way I've reacted to a lot of women in the past has been like, get that sliver of attention. I'm like, holy shit, I'm like a dog with a bone. But I think that assertion there is one of the show's smarter observations about the way men, including myself, react to women, and how they can then potentially be led on to then become CrunchyRoll commenters, funnily enough. Which is which is that, like that when they get shown this attention, if they might, for example, like me, feel that they've not had a lot of good experiences in the past, like that cumulatively that builds up over time, and then next thing you know, you're like, well, hey, she's being really cool with me. That's got to mean something, right? Whereas she's being cool with you because she's just being cool with you because that's what good people do. It's not necessarily the exceptional trait that you make it out to be. Even that doesn't devalue what they do, of course, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the show, like, I appreciate it for saying that. I think that it takes a lot of balls, like, even though for the, it still kind of also fumbles the ball a little bit here with having Rico get with her. And this is why, were I writing this, I think that either A, I would have made it very, very clear that a substantial amount of time has passed, be it either in terms of episode length or at least having that little signifier, like 3 months later, that kind of thing. Or alternatively, I would have gone with what I'm going to term the breakup ending, which is, to me, still sticks in my mind as that romantic comedy that I watched once that the only thing I remember about it was it had the nerve to actually say, hey, you know what, these two aren't good enough together, and they don't end up doing that. As Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston's character in the rom-com era, like where,
God.
hey,
you could be talking about 7 movies.
Well, that's what I was about to say, basically, yeah. But that film like had a lot of nerve to say that. Like, I thought that was kind of refreshing because you've got. I don't really know if I should necessarily be commenting on the appearance of both of those actors, but how often do you see someone who looks like Vince Vaughn like paired up with someone like Jennifer Aniston in films like that?
Well, I think
Adam Sandler specifically.
Yeah, I think fairly often.
Yeah.
These days,
so,
yeah.
So there's something you could read into that about how, like, conventionally attractive, like very attractive women, like, all they really want is a conventionally moderately attractive guy. This is something we could discuss elsewhere. But anyway, the point being is that ending, like, I thought was actually surprisingly progressive, and it still sticks with me to this day. And that's why I think it would have been good if the show had done that here, to not have Rico get with Haru. Specifically also because I'm very sorry to say, but we don't then see anything of them after that point. And that's something I wish shows actually like this actually did, which is they get in a relationship and then we see it progress. We don't simply cut to credits and then go to the final song of the show and then that's it. And we see them go into the sunset. Like I've said before about many times, I like the idea of the endless ending where you get to imagine it. And there are times that works, but there are times I wish that we got to see the whole journey.
I think that the show is smart to end it here. I think it should have taken more time to get there, but I do not think the show's greater strengths lie in that sort of thing that you're talking about. I think it might have been a less interesting set of episodes or even episode, the epilogue. It just because I think the will they or won't they, these characters are doing each other wrong or being shitty to each other. Oh, they're so wrong for each other. Why don't they? Like, I feel like that's all like where the show is doing its best work. And if they showed couples happy together, is that the best? Is that yesterday? Is that seeing yesterday for me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when I say like showing the time afterwards, I think that you can do that in many different ways. And by the way, just to clarify, I'm not saying this is a fault of the show for not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Although I actually do think it kind of is, because I think that it just kind of cheapens like the finale with Haru and Rico, that like they get the moment of confession and that's it. I would have liked to seen a little sliver of them doing something. Like, MMO Junkie did that,
Mm-hmm.
even though it kind of botched it a bit. And I think that it would have been nice to see that. In fact, it would have been a really nice callback if they had Haru waiting outside a movie theater, but this time Rico actually turns up.
Mm-hmm.
That I think would have been neat. But that's minor. So to go back around to my original point, though.
Well, she was waiting. She was waiting in the coffee bar, and he did turn up.
That's true. But to come back to my original point, I think the show points out for Rico's own admission. I think, like a lot of people like me, will take that quite hard, but it's true. And I'm glad that a show actually had the nerve to say that, even if it muddles it a little bit with him getting with Haru in the end. But at least it is willing to admit the complicity that people like myself have in putting too much weight in the behavior of others and the enthusiasm and intent. You got to dial it back sometimes, lads. Trust me.
Yeah. Well said, by the way. I mean, and I'm glad that he was self-reflective enough to say that, And then I'm glad that he, by his own admission, is trying to grow out of that, right? Because he says, like, this is the kind of person that I was. Like, anyone that showed me attention, I really liked it, and I wanted it to go on forever. And I'm sure he's talking quite a bit about Shinako there. And he says, but then I met this really annoying chick who I had to decide was cute. I'm just like, is this the best you can do at a confession? That's a really good point by you. I just super, super, super wish that, like, it just didn't come out of nowhere. Cause like, where is the evidence that he cares about this girl? Like,
yeah,
I just don't see it. I don't, and they could have done it. Like, had they had some more episodes, or, just stretch things out or do more stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, I wanted, it would have made everything better, having some more time and being able to show us that these two characters actually do care about their, potentially, like, younger partners, in a romantic sort of way, especially with Rikuo, because, I mean, holy shit, throughout most of the show, you just thought, like, he thinks that she's just this big inconvenience. And, we get the bit where he's like, I've been lying to myself. But it's like, that's not good enough, man. Like, I need more from you. I definitely needed more from the show in that area. It does help that it's easy to imagine, like, how it would have gone, at least for me. But you can't, I don't think you could let the show skate here, for sure.
No. By the way, for some reason, when you said, like, you'd imagine how it had gone, I just had this weird mental image of Haru, like, and Rico, like, the great, okay, I'll meet you at the movie theater in 15 minutes. And she goes, okay, bye. And then Kansuke just picks her up from the shoulder and she flies off. Don't ask me why that popped into my head. But yeah. And he's just shit, how did you get there in time?
Have you ever played the original Dark Souls, Shadon?
No.
Okay, never mind then. I think the last thing I want to say about the show is that I think that it was unfortunate the amount of hate Shinako got. And we mentioned this before, but I think a lot of people are just going to be like, oh, like, she was being a hypocrite. And that's true, but so is everyone. Everyone's a fucking hypocrite. Like, and this show is about real people. The show's about real people that are, like, a messes. And, like, I mean, in each of our own lives, like, the further if you take a look at a slice of your own life, the farther you zoom out, the more hypocrisy you will find. And it's true for every human.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
And I think that, like, that reaction itself is a kind of highlight that maybe if they look to their own hearts, like, they think to themselves, like, why do I have such a visceral reaction? Why is it a big problem? Because, I think to the show's credit, like, it does evoke those responses. It got a different one out of you and me separately. It was relatable to both of us, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to stick with me after the fact. Don't get me wrong. So yeah, I'm glad for that. I just think that some people on the internet, and when I say some, I mean a lot, unfortunately, they basically.
When I say some, I mean 90% of the internet.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people on the internet, I don't know if there's any one single source of what's done. Let's just assume that it's basically, like, negative influences. Like, they have this expectation that people in fiction will behave in a purely logical and clinical kind of way, which is antithetical to drama. And on top of that, it's not how real people work either. People do fuck up in the ways that yesterday suggests they do. Granted, there is a line to be found between hating a character and understanding that it's the show's intent to make you hate them, and hating them because the show may, as I suggested, potentially be endorsing their behavior, or conversely denouncing it if it's a positive one. It's a very granular line, and it's something that you're going to have to come to your own conclusion on. But I mean, I'm sorry to say, if you've got a problem with Shinako just because she didn't put out, or whatever your reasoning is for that, you might want to grow up a little bit.
I think it'll probably be like, if you're going to point at the hypocrisy, which I think is a real hypocrisy, it would be about like her kind of feelings about Haru when she will not tell Ro that she and Riko are in a relationship.
Yeah.
And it, like, it's is it hypocritical? Sure, but like, I also get it. I think her situation with Ro is a lot different than Haru and Riko's situation.
Maybe they need to actually watch the show, crazy suggestion as that is.
Yeah. And like you said, just be a little bit humble and self-aware that, that the show is trying to depict realistic people.
One of whom has a crow as a pet, admittedly.
Well, like complicated folks, three-dimensional characters. More that it is about these humans, not archetypes. So, yeah, I think that people need to like not make a big deal about these characters being hypocritical. And like you were saying, Riko, is one as well. He didn't go out of his way to tell Haru because he didn't want to hurt her feelings, and yet he wants Shinako to do the same. And I totally understand that though too. I mean, I put myself in his shoes, and I would want the same thing. I mean, I would selfishly think like, now me and Haru, we don't have anything going on, but you and Ro, how do I know there's not something there? I think that you should tell it. You know what I mean? Like, I can totally like just empathize with that perspective, as hypocritical as it is and as selfish as it is. Like, I get it. So, but they both are that. People should extend the same sympathy to Shinako.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, folks. Like, what makes people good is not that they don't have like ideas, like, of like, oh God, I can't believe this person fucking did that. You have no idea what runs through my head every single day. And the thing is, joke as that is, that's also the point. You don't have an idea what runs through my head every single day because I challenge myself on it. I stop myself from saying stuff. I don't believe in the things that, like, my little subconscious little devil inside here says, you do realize that they fucked you over. They didn't. Because I took the time to think about it. And maybe would-be CrunchyRoll commentators, you should do the same before you click that send button.
Don't press send.
Just the power not to post.
What's the Monogatari thing? Shit. The something of something. Oh, it is a lot like the power to. Oh, I'm dying. Someone is gonna. Hopefully, someone tells me. Someone at me in Discord and remind me what this Monogatari quote is. Is it the power to something or what? I can't remember. Anyway,
we'll figure it out. But I think that otherwise brings us to the end of our discussion. Is that right, Doc?
It is. Yeah. So like,
how do you rate the show?
Yeah.
How to rate the
Let's
show?
do it.
I am gonna overall give. I mean, I said I had a net negative on it, but the funny thing is, like, in my own kind of vein of hypocrisy, I've kind of turned on it a little bit as we've discussed it more and more properly articulated and fleshed out my feelings. I really, really wish this show was set in a more modern setting with all the trappings that come with that, because I think that would have made it even better. Because there is a universality to what is being discussed here, and that's always going to make this kind of stuff timeless. And like I said, the idea of Haru going to the convenience store because it's neutral territory, that's true. That is the way people act. Not necessarily a convenience store, but a bar, a pub, a cinema, a chat room, a Discord server, you name it. That's the way this thing can go. But I just wish it wasn't.
Waiting for the anime knockoff of Discord called Harmony. Needs to happen.
Is it gonna have loading messages constantly going, ooh, here we go?
Leroy Jenkins, etc., etc.
No, it'll just entirely be like anime trope sayings like loading now senpai or something like that,
Yes. Ooh.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a universality stuff that makes this timeless. I just think that unfortunately that doesn't mean it also can't be dated simultaneously, and that's part of what the show feels like. The gender stuff with the cooking bothers me because I wish that, that we had something more interesting to talk about, was more relevant to modern times, rather than it being something that feels kind of outdated. I am going to say that your mileage, again, is going to vary for this. Like, I'm speaking as a cishet dude here with a ton of baggage and also 13 years of fruitlessly trying to find a partner. And on the other hand, Doc is, of course, someone who has been married for a very long time. But that's just our two perspectives separately. You know, if you're a woman, for example, I can't speak to your perspective as to how you might feel about Haru and Shinako and how they're presented. Maybe you've got a more visceral reaction in that. I know that a lot of people would put off this show in particular because they thought it was just going to be about two women orbiting this twat of a man. And then eventually one was. And the funny thing is, well, I think there's more to it than that. That doesn't make that statement untrue. And it's going to boil down a lot how you feel about the characters.
Right.
So, that being said, I'm very glad I watched it. I'm very impressed by what it did in terms of its execution on its visuals. I've grown a little bit as a person from it, I would hope. Fingers crossed. So I'd be wrong if I gave it a bad score. So all told, this is quite the U-turn from me. But again, like saying no to go by hypocrisy, and I suppose it keeps it, on brand. If I'm a hypocrite myself by saying I had a net negative and then turning around it.
It's okay. No. It's you have huge problems with it, and it's totally fair.
Yeah, I'm going to give this show 3.75 secondhand moonstones out of 5.
Nice one. Okay, that's a good rating. I can, yes. That rating resonates with me. Okay. I really love the show a lot. Like I said, it made me feel a whole gamut of different feelings, and I value that highly in a show. Not just that it made me feel, that it made me feel very strongly. I watched a lot of anime over the years, and, I say the majority of it did not make me feel strongly, nearly as strongly as this show. And I should watch more anime romances for this reason, so I can get this drama that I just feed on. You
like Snafu then?
Yeah, no, I've seen the first season. It was good.
Second season was good as well.
Yeah, I need to watch it. I own it, but I've not seen it yet. I have the Blu-rays, but for whatever reason, I'm reticent to return to it. But I did like the first season a lot. Yeah, I thought this was a very good show, very well written, very well realized characters, well directed. I didn't have any major problems with it until the very end. And I think that the fact that the end is so important to the show, and I'm not displeased with the destination. I think that the kind of final leg of the journey was too rushed, and they needed to lay much more groundwork to make the destination feel earned. So I think that, because it was such a major part of the show, it's worth knocking off a whole star. So I'm going to give this, 4, hairpins through your ear, you dumbass, out of 5. 4 clothespins or paper clips. That's what those things are. Yeah. 4 paper clips through the ear, out of 5. This is a show I would recommend to a lot of people. And I think my wife would actually get a lot out of the show.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot of different people who maybe don't find generally themselves connecting with anime, would take a lot from the show. It's one of those sort of shows. It's a really good human drama.
You know what's funny? There's a couple of things I want to say in response to what you just said there. The first thing that came to my mind was, this reminds me, now that you mentioned it, a little bit of 91 Days.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. Yeah.
There we go. Because I could see this becoming a live action one. That being said, actually, no, because there were the flashbacks which had their own artistic streaks to them. But then again, you maybe could do something equivalent in live. I don't know. But I mean, that again speaks to the universality of what's going on, that you don't necessarily need the medium to get the message across.
Don't make this live action. It's great animated. I loved it animated. Don't do it.
Unless they expand it out to 24 episodes.
Yes, then please, then I'll watch it. Yes, yes.
Give each episode an hour. There you
go. Ooh,
Dude,
I'm so down for that.
The Netflix format. The second thing is, would be listeners at home, whether you're catching this on Patreon when it's gone free to air. If you've seen the show, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, like on if it did resonate with you in the way they did with me and Doc. Because, as I say, we're just two perspectives, and we have a lot of commonality in like our attributes. That means that we don't obviously get the voices of people who like might have very different reactions to it. For example, women, or even if you're LGBTQ plus. Or even maybe if you're Ace and Arrow, because I could see that being something that might be explored in Shinako and Rikuro's relationship and how it doesn't end up working out, but maybe there are elements of that in there. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts if you've seen it, and if you did indeed resonate with any of the characters. Generally, if you just want to offer basically your opinions on the stuff that we've discussed and say, like, I agree or I don't, or here's something that you might have thought. I always like having discussions of this sort, so do let us know about that.
I could totally see someone thinking that like a feeling that they identify as an Ace person with Shinako. I did yeah, I can, that's really interesting. That I would be really interested to hear that perspective.
Absolutely. And the third and final point I'll make is, would-be creators of anime, do not King Crimson your ending.
No, please. It is the thing that anime has the most trouble with. Probably like down throughout the years is sticking the landing. It's very hard, but this show like didn't make it easy for it. It made it even harder for itself, and it stumbled there at the end. And I think the show will still be remembered. I think, unlike listeners, this will be a show that's talked about at the end of the year. I think it will be a show that is looked back, even years from now, because the characters are so strong, and that tends to be more so than like mood, atmosphere, plot, or even aesthetics. What sticks in the mind of people, at least that I know of in anime fandom, the characters. And these characters are so strong, especially, Haru. I could see folks, like the show sticking with them because of that.
All right, well, on that note, we're going to wrap up at this point. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for your patience, as well as we're just getting back into the normal swing of things. So we're now concluded on both listeners, and yes, they were attached.
We did it!
So we did it!
Yes. We fucking did it. It finally happened, and now we move on to
something we've not actually decided on yet.
Oh, that's true. But I feel like I know what it is. But we'll talk about it off mic.
Stay tuned, loyal listeners.
Yeah.
Again, sorry, I know you've been waiting around a while for that. Just have to ask your patience a little longer. So, yeah, we will be moving on to new seasons of stuff very shortly. It is admittedly a scant season because of COVID-19. That's the reality that we face here. So we'll see what we come up with. If you are a patron, of course, do let us know if you want anything adding to the poll for deciding our second stream content to replace Yesterday Wotate going forward, because that's obviously going to be your choice. That's part of the privilege of doing that.
We got to come up with some polls for the patrons, and we got to
Shaden gets a hair transplant.
we have to
go for me.
We have to decide on the gap anime that we're going to cover between now and when we would start covering summer. And
I had a crazy idea, and I'm going to say this on mic, but I'm not going to ask you to answer it until later, just so you can ruminate on it. I heard that you're not going to believe I'm going to say this, but I feel like I want to look at it just for the sheer what the fuck factor. Apparently, do you remember Om Shinrikyo, the fucking death cult?
Yes, I do. Of course.
Apparently, they made an anime.
They did. Yes.
Do you want to watch it? Do I answer
really?
that question?
No. We have talked about, and I think I actually mentioned this, so I'll say it again on this cast, that like, those patron requests that we were going to do essays about, that we would do podcast discussions of our thoughts and notes on those shows. And so I think we're going to get started chipping away at that. So we've not forgotten about your requests. We have them, and we will be doing them. I know that also you all have expressed patience and long suffering regarding that stuff. So get ready for that content.
Hell yeah.
You bastards. I kid. I lovable bastards. No, I'm still kidding. You guys rock. I love you, patrons. You're the best.
Undig yourself, Doc. cease your deep earth excavation there.
Yes. Yeah, I will. I can't. It's done. I'm buried. I buried myself under the earth. Thank you, lovely patrons. I look forward to making more stuff for you, and I hope you look forward to listening to it.
Damn right.
/ watching it. If you're watching this patron exclusive stream, if people like this, we'll do it again.
Maybe they're watching it without audio and then just imagining what we're saying. I can't do that. I really can't. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Take care of yourselves. Obviously, in the current climate, things are still dangerous. I'm acutely aware of the fact that things are not getting any better in the US, in particular for our US listeners. Wear a mask, for fuck's sake. Like, I'm not even going to suggest it's like a matter of choice here. It's a matter of you giving a shit about other people. Fucking wear a mask. Even if it's just a face covering or a bike smock, fucking do it. Take care of yourself. Wash your fucking hands. Do all the good shit that we've been told about. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your friends. Take care of your family. Stay safe. Stay sane. And we'll, of course, be back sometime soon to do more content. But from myself and Doc, as we often say here on the podcast, embrace sure everyone to the ends of the universe. Good night and happy Friday.
Rest in peace, Kenoshita. We miss you. Convenience store forever. And bring back the brothers.
Damn right.